So, Jim, that might have been your cue. Because full confession, sometimes when, as a pastor, you get stuck, you find inspiration from different places. Sometimes it's in art. Sometimes it's in things that happen throughout the week. Sometimes I'll take the music that Bruce has picked according to the theme of everything, and it will inspire me. And this week, the anthem that Rachel sang, was going to sing, is what inspired me. It is very soulful, very deep. It has this line in it that I want to share with you. Show me, Lord, how to love like you. Something as simple as trusting in you gives me the time, dear Lord, to learn a thing or two. Because nothing's as important as the life I live with you. Let me share that again. Show me, Lord, how to love like you. Something as simple as trusting in you gives me the time, dear Lord, to learn a thing or two, because nothing's as important as the life I live with you. Now, the way this song goes, and Rachel tells me that she's not singing it today because she just doesn't have the vocal capacity right now. She's still, quite frankly, recovering from a cold, from the COVID. But it's certainly not a traditional PCUSA church. It's really not even a traditional church piece, or not even a traditional Calvin piece. It felt to me, the dozen times or so that I listened to it, it feels to me a little bit more like my second mother, my spiritual mother, Shirley's church, would have sung. Except it wouldn't have been 3.5 minutes. It would have been at least 10 to 15 if it was not a whole half an hour. But that's all beside the point. The point is that song is what inspired me. Not just to have a vision, but God's vision to see that we can become better together, a better place together. Whether it's the tradition of washing your hands or the tradition of a particular style of worship or the way of being a church, when we do things that are not traditional, some people take notice. They keep a safe distance. And like they're dreaming in a jewelry store or a car dealership or just wasting time cruising the mall or doom scrolling on Facebook Market, what they are saying is, I'm just looking. It's sad when people spend their lives just looking, never willing to invest their energies, their emotions, or economic security in anything that involves risk. People who are permanently just looking, they drift in and out of jobs without ever finding a vocation, in and out of relationships without ever daring to love or be loved. They drift in and out of communities without ever voting or dropping anchor. And they drift in and out of the church without ever opening their hearts to the Holy One or the pulse of the risen Christ's body, or being so passionately moved that they're transformed by the Spirit of the living God. That is exactly the kind of just looking that Jesus is calling out in today's gospel reading from Mark. The Pharisees and the teachers, they had come down from Jerusalem, and interestingly, they are gathered around Jesus, just looking at him and the disciples. The disciples have come from a long day of loving hard and deep, too tired and too hungry to care about washing their dirty hands, so they immediately sit down without washing. And the Pharisees seize upon the moment, this ceremonial, traditional oversight, and they question Jesus. Why don't your disciples live according to the traditions of the elders and clean their hands before they eat? Now, kids, listen to your mothers. Wash your hands before you eat. That's not the point. This is an illustration, right? We don't want those germs to get inside of us. The point is, this is just what Jesus needed to hear. And so he sticks up for his disciples, turns on the teachers, and in essence says, you hypocrites, why are you just looking at the outside? Your tradition and righteous indignation for human tradition of just looking is not God's command. God looks on what matters, on the inside, at the heart. It's not enough to just look at the risen Christ. We must look at his heart and become like him. We must become doers who act. This is where it becomes uncomfortable because it can get sloppy. We will try things and they won't work. But we haven't failed. We've just learned another way that it doesn't work. We've grown through laughing at it together. We've gotten deeper and closer to what God is really calling us to do. Note that in the Bible, it's not the planners who plan. We must protect ourselves from becoming like the Pharisees who just look, because they knew the Bible inside and out, and their strict, literal interpretation of the law became a plan that was paralyzing, to say the least. Now, don't get me wrong, planning has its place, but too often it gets in the way of God's will. Too often we just look and make a plan. Our book of order went from being this thick because we saw a problem and we made a plan to fix it, to being this thick because we realized it was choking the life out of us. In the Bible, you'll find plenty of precedents for action without a plan, but very little evidence for plans without action. Abraham didn't have a plan, but he packed up and he left home. Moses didn't have a clue, but he confronted Pharaoh with an ultimatum. Rahab didn't have a friend, but she hid Joshua's spies in Jericho. Elijah didn't have hope, but he defeated all the prophets of Baal. Nehemiah didn't have a country, but he rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem. Oh, that's great, Pastor, but that's all in the Old Testament. What about the New Testament? I'm happy you asked. Mary didn't have relations, but she bore the Son of God. John the Baptist didn't have a home, but he made the wilderness his pulpit. Peter didn't have a backbone, but he became Petra, the rock of the church. Saul of Tarsus didn't have a heart, but Paul became the spokesman for the Gentiles. Jesus didn't have a single sin, but he suffered, died, and rose so that we may rise too. Isn't that the whole crux of faith? That we don't know every detail, every contingency, every possible development that awaits us, and yet we still act. In faith, we act on God's vision that God has given to us to become an open, inclusive, and affirming safe sanctuary where kindness makes everyone comfortable to be exactly who they were uniquely created to be, where compassion moves us to the deepest understanding that we all need to belong, where humility grounds us in the truth that we're all broken and hurting and need to heal, where respect may not reconcile the 1% that it truly divides us, but it will reconcile to the best of our abilities all of our relationships, where perfect love has transformed us into a beloved community. An example that makes our loved ones in our homes, our places of work and service, our places of rest and recreation, our neighborhoods, and indeed the whole world a better place. This sounds risky, and it's scary, but we do know who is in charge. A life of faith demands that we are doers with the highest expectations, who work hard and make real sacrifices and know that ultimately we got this because God's got us. Friends, may we have the courage, strength, and faith, like Tony did, to sing a different song with every God-given gift that she has. May the anthem we're supposed to have, Love Like You, be our prayer this week. Show me, Lord, how to love like you. Something as simple as trusting in you. Give me the time, dear Lord, to learn a thing or two, because nothing's as important as the life I live with you. May the end of this message be the beginning for Calvin and you and I, and every soul placed into our lives, to become an open and inclusive, affirming, safe sanctuary where perfect love is transforming us into a beloved community that makes every part of our lives, indeed the entire world, a better place. Amen? Amen. Amen.